Hey everybody, just wanted to say real quick that from my last episode of Road to YCS Atlanta, I talked about the side deck. These are also some cards that were brought to my attention by my dad as we were kind of going over some side deck options. I just wanted to go over them real quick before we jump into the main content of this video. Nomen of Extermination is actually really good. It lets you select and destroy and remove from play one face down spell or trap. And if it was a trap, then both players must remove from play all copies of that card from their deck. Not as good as the other ones, but still something interesting to kind of think about, help get rid of those other copies of anti-spell fragments in case they have it set, but again they can just chain it, so it's not one of the best options. Then there's also this card that I've seen a few players playing, Spatial Collapse. You can only activate this card when both you and your opponent each have 5 or less cards on the field. As long as this card remains face up on the field, the total number of cards that each player can have on the field is 5. Can really slow down your opponent because once they set up their pendulum scales, they can only play 3 more cards. So definitely a really good tech. And then we have Summon Limit. Neither player can summon more than 2 times per turn. Negated summons count toward this limit, and negated cards or effects that would summon do not count. So restricts your opponent to being able to only pendulum summon 2 cards, and I just kind of repeated myself there. So they set up their scales, they can pendulum summon out 2, but then they can't pendulum summon for the rest of the turn, which is really nice. I've already talked about this one, Mask of Restrict, just really good in the Monarch matchup. Your opponent can't build a tribute or anything, really slows them down. And then finally, Summon Breaker. During main phase 1, if the turn player successfully conducts their 3rd summon of a monster or monsters this turn, it becomes the end phase. So once they summon their 3rd monster, they have to immediately end their turn, which is extremely good. And it's a field spell, so yeah, if they really want to waste their resources on a field spell instead of your back row, pretty good. But anyway, with that being said, let's dive into the main topic of this video. Alright, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your host with the most, Avery LR32 here, and I wanted to bring you guys this video in response to Mega Capital G. This is going to be my second video in response to Capital G on my channel, and it's going to be talking about how a lot of people are talking about how you either have a god tier deck or a garbage deck. Also, in response to the replays that you're going to be seeing, you can just kind of ignore them unless you really want to watch them, because this is mostly my dad's replays, and so he doesn't play meta. So yeah, just putting that in advance there. And then a lot of these people just end up rage quitting. But yeah, so but a lot of people are coming out nowadays talking about how if you don't have a god tier deck at your disposal, then you pretty much just lose the game. And it's really kind of sad to see that because it kind of, puts a lot of people at a disadvantage. Like, they think that they don't have a shot or whatever the case may be. Like, you saw this clearly in Tier 0 formats like Teledad, where if you didn't play Teledad, you truly didn't have a chance. But as the game has evolved to where we've kind of gotten away from Tier 0 formats, we don't have as much of that craziness. And even some people say that we're in a Tier 0 format right now, which we're not. We're absolutely not in a Tier 0 format. Pepe is good, but it's still, a possibly beatable deck. Like, this isn't Dark Arm format where if you had a Crush Card Virus, you knew for a fact that you were going to top a regional. That's just how it is. So, it's really debatable and controversial, but essentially what Capital G was talking about in his video was how you have a deck like Buster Blader that is actually pretty good. I have yet to test it myself, but from what I've heard, it's actually pretty decent. And everyone says, oh, it's such a bad deck because it's not on this god tier like Pepe and Cosmo or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, you need to give other decks a shot. Like, there could be a sleeper deck in the format. We have decks like Statue Stun that, play cards like Fossil Dyna and Blazing Mirror Force and all these other cards to stop the opponent. And it's a very solid rogue anti-meta pick, and if you don't want to play meta, you can play something like that. Now, granted, are you at more of a disadvantage than, say, a deck that can use the pendulum mechanic? Absolutely. But what you also need to consider is how well can that deck bounce back even without the pendulum mechanic. And it's really something that you need to consider. Like, obviously Monkey Board is, a 1-card scale, which is very good. But if you're able to go first and you're running a deck like Statue Stun, and if you're able to go first, if you can set up your board, then you already have a much bigger advantage against your opponent. So it really all comes down to how you build your deck and how innovative or how not innovative you want to be. If you want to follow the crowd and play Cosmo and just, play a certain variant that has better matchups than, say, regular Cosmo strategy, then that's obviously going to be able to put you at a bigger advantage than, say, any other deck. But people really need to get away from this concept of, well, if you're not playing the best deck of the format, you just don't have a chance at all. This isn't a Tier 0 format, guys. Like, you still have a shot. you know, it's just something that has been around for a long time and it just needs to stop. Like, I remember when I first started, I wasn't really playing anything that competitive. I remember, I've told this story before, but I started back when the Fusion deck became the Extra deck and Teledad was just starting up back in 2008. Yeah, 2008, I believe. And I remember I was playing an attack deck, is what I called it. Um, and back then, my dad actually built my decks for me. He didn't play competitively. He just, well, he didn't play at locals or whatever when we first started going. He would just kind of watch on the side and keep track of life points and whatever. And keep in mind, I mean, 2008, I'm 19 years old now. So yeah, do the math. But yeah, so it was basically a beatdown deck is what it was. And yeah, I got like 2 wins. I was like 2-1 at my first locals, and I ended up leaving just because it was taking way too long for them to get going. And ever since then, I've just stayed the whole time. But yeah, but I remember I went against like Glare Beast and Teledad and stuff like that, and I just got my ass beat. But I played against these other decks that were like rogue strategies, and I ended up winning just because of the fact that my deck was better. Now, granted, 2008 was a very different time, and I understand this, but it's still you know, cool to see that, all these years later, you're still able to be innovative in the game and not just have a tier 0 format every single format. Like some people even at this day will say that Dragon Rulers was a tier 0 format, um, which is debatable. I mean, I ran the deck, but I mean, it's really up to interpretation on how you want to put it. But the way I see it is that if you're able to be innovative enough, any deck can be any deck, and I've always stood by that philosophy, and I will continue to stand by that philosophy. Like, even look at Monarchs with this new support. If they didn't have this new support, people would have to be more innovative with the deck to try and win. Granted, would it be as good? No, absolutely not. But because this new support came out, it breathed life into an old style of a deck, and now they're actually able to really compete with Pepe and Cosmo for that matter. I mean, they destroy Cosmo. I mean, it's very hard for me to win games against Monarchs, especially if it's like a stun variant with like March of the Monarchs and stuff like that. Which also, if you guys want to see a deck profile of my dad's build, let me know. It's a stun variant, so let me know in the comments if you guys want to see that. But yeah, you guys, this is pretty much it for the video. Let me know what you guys think about just tier 0 formats in general. I think tier 0 formats are just a stupid idea. I think the last one that we've ever really seen, I would have, in my opinion, was Teledad format. Even just starting out, I feel like that format was definitely tier 0 looking back on it. The Dragon Ruler format's up to interpretation. Personally, I don't think it was a tier 0 format, just because we had spellbooks and Dragon Rulers kind of going at it, and they were pretty much around equal with each other. It really depended on how both players opened up. But that format was a garbage format anyway. Like, I hate whenever people say that that format was a great format. Like, okay, so you say that that format's good, and then those same people say that Teledad format was a bad format. Yeah, they were both pretty much the same thing, except there was 2 decks reigning supreme and not just one. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about all this. Don't get it construed like I'm not agreeing with capital G. Obviously, I am. But just kind of want to put my 2 cents out there, and it's all about innovation at the end of the day. If you're able to be innovative enough and know how to play your cards right, any deck can beat any deck. It just all matters on how well you want, or how much you want to innovate, and what your actual concept is. So anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for watching as always.